Hello and welcome to Skills and Automation. My name is Ash and today we are going to look at how to create a PowerPoint slide deck based on charts and other information originating from Excel. And just to be clear, this is an Excel VBA video, which means our VBA code will be hosted in an Excel macro. Let's first look at a demo of what we are about to build so that you get an idea of all the awesome things we'll be coding very soon. Let's look at the dataset in Excel. We'll be creating a monthly sales presentation. This is a data with monthly sales for the current month across 4 stores. All the setup in this Excel file is based on tables, formulas, and charts, so no VBA here. Our coding for this video will mostly focus on creating the PowerPoint presentation. Based on this data set, we have an Excel report in the main worksheet. It shows us the budget versus actual sales variance. Again, no VBA here. Column D and column E are just formulas. And again, based on the source data set, we have a clustered column chart. This chart shows us the units of products sold per store for the current month. We have a page field in cell B1 which represents the store. It allows us to select any store and create a chart for that store. So this is the Excel file. Our task for today is to create a PowerPoint slide deck. When I say slide deck, I mean a full set of slides from the opening slide to the end with commentary as well. So we will create a complete package and not just a single slide. Let's look at the slide deck. We have the opening slide. We will populate this via VBA, and the month and the year are based on values from the Excel sheet. Next, we have the variance report copied over from the Excel sheet that we saw earlier. It has been pasted as an embedded picture, and we have some comments here. This positive part is dynamically generated. If the total variance was a negative percentage, then it would say a negative result. The point here is just to show you all the possibilities via VBA. Next, we have 4 slides for each of our 4 stores. We will paste in the chart from the Excel file. So we will use VBA to select each store from the pivot table, copy over this chart, and then select the next store. And we have some comments at the bottom as well. And that's what we'll be creating. And one more thing, we can always make this slide deck a lot more pretty. I will show you how, or rather where we can make these slides better. I have used the PowerPoint Slide Master to create the base slide layouts, saved it in a separate template file, and I'm just calling that template from the VBA code. So this logo and the background is all embedded into the Slide Master. And if you want to make your slide look better, I would suggest that you modify the Slide Master rather than the VBA code. And we'll see how to create the Slide Master as well in this video. So that's the demo. Actually, let's play out the macro once just for the satisfaction. Let's go to our code, Alt F11. For this project, I have purposely placed everything into a single sub procedure. There will be a bit of repetition here, but I did have a think about it and felt that breaking this code into child sub procedures will just add unnecessary complications. So let's play this macro. And let's go to our folder, and we have a slide deck. Let's open it. Looks good. Okay, let's start building this project. This project requires 2 initial setups before we start building the VBA code. We need to set up our Excel report and the PowerPoint Slide Master. The idea is that our VBA code will create a PowerPoint presentation based off the data and objects from the Excel report using the PowerPoint Slide Master as a template. In this section, we will build out the Excel report. So this is the Excel file that we saw earlier, but it's in the raw format. There are no charts here and there is no data either. Let's go to the main sheet. Column A to C is hard-coded. In reality, we would dynamically bring in this data, But that's not a focus for today. Column D and column E have formulas in them. Column D consolidates the data from the data sheet for each store and product using SUMIFs. And column E calculates the variance between the budget and the actual numbers. We will not build these formulas either. They are pretty straightforward. However, this template is the starting point for today. And I will load this template to GitHub as well for those of you who want to follow along. And one more thing, the total variance for each store is given in row 5, row 9, row 13, and row 17. I have hard-coded these numbers in the store worksheet. So you can see the row numbers here next to the store names. In real context, we would generate these values dynamically as well, but as I've mentioned before, that's not our focus for today. So let's first paste in some data. Just have some raw data here, Control C, Control V. We will convert this data range into a table. This will make the range dynamic for the next time we want to paste in the data. So let's do that first. Select anywhere in the data range, go to Insert, Table. The full data range has been automatically captured. Leave the checkbox for the headers ticked. Click OK. Let's go to the main sheet. The actual subtotals and the variance percentages have now been populated due to our formulas. Go back to the data sheet. Let's create a chart which shows the number of units sold per product for each store. Select any cell in the table. Go to Insert. We'll come to Recommended Charts. Scroll down to the clustered column chart. Click OK. We get a new sheet. Zoom in. Let's rename this sheet to Product Charts. We need to assign it a code name as well in VBA. Hit Alt F11. Click on the Product Charts sheet. Come to the Properties window. If you can't see this, we go to View, Properties window, and let's rename this to WS Charts. We'll be referring to our worksheets using the worksheet code name in our macros. Go back to the Excel sheet. So what do we have here? We have a pivot table on the left with an associated pivot chart in the middle. This chart is showing us the total number of products sold for every store. We need to change the view to show us the products sold per store. So we need to add a slicer for each store. We can do this in different ways. Today we'll take the simplest route. Let's come to the pivot fields on the right. If you can't see it, right click on your chart and come down to Show Field List. Place a check mark for the store and drag the store up to the filters box. This will have created a slicer or a filter option in cell B2. This field is called the page field and allows us to filter both the pivot table and the pivot chart. Make a note of this as we will be accessing this field via VBA macro. Okay, so select any store. We'll select North Point. Click OK. And instantly the chart view changes to products sold only for the North Point store. Let's give this chart a name. Click on the chart, go up to Pivot Chart Analyze and come down here to chart name. We'll give it a name. We'll call it Chart Products. Tab out. We can also change the name of the pivot table. So click anywhere in the pivot table, go to Pivot Table Analyze and change the name. And before we finish this section, I want to highlight why we changed our original data set to a table. It is because the pivot chart will update if we make any changes to this table. Okay, so let's add a new row for the North Point store. And let's change the units to a really high number so that it's obvious that we have updated it. Go to Product Charts sheet, right click on the pivot table, click refresh, and our chart has been updated without having to change the data range for this chart. So this Excel template is now a one-time setup. For the next month, all we need to do is delete this data rows, add in the data for a new month. The report in the main sheet will automatically update. And for the chart, just refresh the pivot table and the charts will update as well. These are pretty much the standard steps for any analyst creating an Excel report. So once these steps are complete, we can now run our macro to create the presentation. And just to be cheeky, I will say that we can copy and paste the data set automatically and even create the brand new charts directly from VBA. But that would be overkill for this video. Okay, that's it for the Excel setup. Next, let's create the PowerPoint slide master. In this section, we will build a base PowerPoint template that contains all the formatting, color combinations, and design for a slide deck. We can achieve this using the slide master. So let's open a blank presentation in PowerPoint. Any PowerPoint file will contain some default layouts. We can check those out by going to the Home ribbon and click on Layout, or we can right click against the slide and go to Layouts. We can see many layout options. The slide that we are currently on is the title slide. For the next slide, we could go with another layout, and we will be using different layouts to create our slides in this video. Now, in a corporate setting, you would have some recommended color and font schemes for presentations, and we can incorporate our corporate specific design into these layouts using the slide master. So let's do that. Go to View, click on Slide Master. Now we can see the backend design of our layouts. We'll first create a design in the slide master, save this PowerPoint file as an empty template, and then call this template for creating our macro slides. I highly recommend doing some research into slide master and see what all is possible. Today, we'll skim through the surface to give you an idea. Let's come to the topmost slide. This first template here is the top level or master slide. Any changes you do here will cascade down to the next level layouts. So let's change the background color, right click, format background. Let's give it a nice solid fill. And we can now see that the other layouts have the same background as well. Let's change the font to a different font. We'll go with Arial rounded bold, and we'll change the color of the font to white. Again, the changes have been cascaded down. And lastly, let's add a corporate logo. I'm just going to create a simple rounded rectangle. Okay, that looks good for now. This logo will appear on all the slides as well. You could customize these designs as much as you want. Let's return to our normal view. Go to View, click Normal. Okay, let's right click, go to Layout, and we can see that our slide master settings have been preserved on the other layouts as well. Let's keep this title slide and save this file as is with no content in the slide. So File, let's give this file a name and click Save. And that's it for building out the PowerPoint template. Next, let's move on to building out our code. Okay, so we have built the Excel report and we have created a PowerPoint template. Now we are finally ready to begin our coding. Let's hit Alt F11. Let's create a new module. We need to connect to the PowerPoint application, and to do that, we need to create a reference to the PowerPoint object library, which will give us access to all the wonderful objects, methods, and properties related to PowerPoint. So let's go to Tools, References, scroll down till you see Microsoft, and then come down to the Microsoft PowerPoint library, select the latest version, -16. Yours might be different. That's okay. Click OK. This method of adding references is called early binding, and it will give us access to IntelliSense, which are prompts that will help us further down while coding. Okay, let's create a sub. Let's start by refreshing the pivot table so that it is in sync with the data set. We don't need to call the pivot table specifically. We can just refresh all the tables and charts in our entire Excel file in one go using the refresh all method. So as mentioned during the demo, we'll be creating one long procedure. So I'll be adding comments to separate out each section. Let's start by connecting to PowerPoint by initializing a new instance. So let's declare a variable to represent the PowerPoint application. And when I hit dot, we can see our list of PowerPoint related objects, methods, and properties pop up. This is called IntelliSense. And that's because we added a reference to the PowerPoint object library. This is an object variable, so we need to set it. And let's instantiate a new instance. Using this instance of PowerPoint, we will create a new presentation file. Since this video is a general tutorial on PowerPoint, we will first check out how to open a brand new PowerPoint file. So to do that, we will use the add method. Let's put a code break at end sub and play this macro. And it has created a brand new file. Let's add a new slide. It is the original blank template, but we want to open the slide master template that we had saved earlier. So to do that, we need to use the open method and specify the full file path. Let's close this, stop the macro. So this is a full file path of the slide master that we had saved in the previous section. Let's save our macro and run it. This time we have opened our saved template. Fantastic. Now we want to start the presentation with a clean slate. That means delete any existing slides. We can do this programmatically. The template that we had saved does contain the title slide. So we'll delete it off once we have opened the file. Realistically, we could just omit this step by deleting the title slide in the original template itself. But since this is a tutorial, I just want to show a couple of extra tricks out here. So we'll iterate through all the slides. We need an iteration variable. Next, we will construct a for loop that iterates backwards from the total count of slides in the PowerPoint file to the first slide, which is at index 1. So to go backwards, we need to say step -1. And why backwards? It is to avoid skipping any slides. This is the same logic as deleting rows in a worksheet. We go backwards in that case as well. And let's delete the current slide as we go through the loop. Okay, let's test this out. Save the code, run the macro. So our presentation has no new slides, and just to confirm, when we add a new slide, the slide master settings kick back in. Okay, so this works well. In the next section, we will add the first title slide in our presentation. If you remember the demo, we had a title slide saying month-end sales report in the main text box and the month and year below it. That month and year was dynamic, so it will change every month. In our case, we will grab the values as is from the main sheet from cells A1 and B1 respectively. Let's go back to the code. Some space. So far, our presentation is blank. Let's add the first slide. We need to provide the position where we want to place the new slide. Our title slide will be our first slide, so the position is 1. And next, we can choose the layout. We have the option to choose the same layouts that we see on the front end as well. So for the first slide, we will go with the title layout. Okay, so I know we had the title slide to begin with, and then we deleted it up out here, and now we are adding it back. But this video is about showing different tricks. Besides, we can't rely on the template as well. What if someone had modified it or added a few slides in there? To be safe, we would have to delete everything anyways. Okay, next let's grab the month and year. So let's declare some variables for it. Month is in cell A1 on the main sheet. and the year is in cell B1. First, we'll populate the title, which will be hard coded in. Actually, let's visually see where we are adding our text. Let's play this macro out. I think I've chosen the wrong method. It should just be .add. Okay, save the file, run the macro. Let's open a file. So our title is going to go in this text box, and the month and year is going to go into the subtitle text box. The text box is basically a shape. To access it, we need to follow the hierarchy. So it's on our first slide and it is the first shape. So this is a text box. And in order to fill in the text, we need to go text frame, text range dot text. And let's add a title. Okay, this method is fine. But when there are multiple text boxes or other shapes on the slide, it's difficult to understand which shape we are accessing just by looking at this index number. We can even use the name of the shape. So let's comment out this line. Now we can get the name of the shapes on the slide by iterating through each shape in the shapes collection and printing out the name. So let's do that. So we'll loop through the shapes collection in the first slide. And we'll print out the name of each shape on the first slide. Okay, so let's run this macro. We can see out here that the first shape is title 1 and the name of the second shape is subtitle 2. And we'll use these names to reference our shapes. So we don't really need this looping code. So I'm just going to comment it out for your reference. And let's copy this same code, and instead of 1, let's add the shape name, and let's edit shape 2 as well. So this will just be a month followed by the year. And since we'll be using this pSlide object again, let's empty it out. Okay, let's test what we have so far. Great. So our title slide has been populated along with the month and the year. Our slide deck is now beginning to shape up. Next, we will add the budget versus actual report. We have the budget versus actual variance report on the main sheet out here. We will copy and paste it onto a new slide after the title slide. Let's go back to our code. So let's add a new slide. Okay, so we need to provide the index number of the position that we want this next slide to go in. We know that it's the second slide, but since this is a tutorial video, let's determine it dynamically. We can just count the number of slides in the presentation and add 1 to it. And this time we will go with a different layout, which is the title only, where we just have a header on top. So let's copy the table over. We just need to copy the current region. And paste it into the new slide. We will paste the report as a high quality picture. So we need paste special, which is a method of the shapes object. And we'll paste it as an enhanced meta file. I'm just going to explicitly state the data type as well. Okay. Now that we have a table in the presentation, let's resize it, increase the size and move it slightly to the left because we'll have some comments coming in on the right. We could access the shape again using the name, but I'm just going to go directly with 2 for now. First, let's adjust the position. We can do this using the top and left properties. Top signifies the distance from the top of the slide and left signifies the distance from the left of the slide. The distance is measured in points and we'll do this with trial and error. So first, let's assign top to 50 and left to 50 as well. And as I mentioned, this is just trial and error. Let's play the macro. Let's see what we have. Okay, we need to push this table down slightly and move it a little bit more to the center. Let's do that. So a couple of tips while doing this trial and error. We are still in execution mode as seen by the yellow line out here. First, let's increase the distance from the top and increase the distance from the left. 100 and 100 looks okay. And I could just run the macro again or drag the yellow arrow to the top of the width statement and loop through this again. Just press F8, F8, F8 and go back to the PowerPoint slide. So the distance from the left looks okay. Let's move it slightly a bit more down. Go back to our code. We are still in execution mode. I'm just going to change the 100 to 150 for the top property. Take my yellow arrow right back to the top of the with statement. F8 again. Go back to the PowerPoint slide. So this position looks okay. And we can stop the macro. Next, we can resize the shape using the width and height property. We won't do trial and error anymore. I already know what measurements will suit. So the width is 400. The height is 350. So we are actually giving a fixed position and a size to our table. And this works because the table has a fixed size as well. So it ends in row 18 and in column E. And no matter the amount of data rows in the data sheet, the size of this table will not increase. But in the scenario where we expect this table to be of a variable size, then we would have to do this dynamically, which is a bit tougher. And for now, that's out of scope for this video. Let's move on with the coding. Next, let's add a title on the top. We can access it as shape1 or access it directly as a separate property of the shapes object. Let's do that for a change. So we'll go with the title property and then the usual text frame, text range, and text. Let's give it a title. Next, let's add some dynamic commentary. In the demo, the comment said we had a positive result. We can determine this by accessing cell E18 in the main sheet, which tells us total variance of actuals versus the budget. This number is really high. I think we had added this in the demo. I have not yet deleted it. It's distorting the numbers slightly. Okay, that looks good. So for this month, we have a positive total variance. For the commentary, we'll use a simple logic. If the variance is 2.5% above budget, we'll say it's a positive result. If it's below minus 2.5, we'll say it's a negative variance. And else, or rather, if it's between 2.5 and minus 2.5, then we'll say it's a neutral result. First, let's grab the value of the variance from cell E18. Declare a variable to hold the result value. We will use a select case statement to assess our conditional logic. So if the variance is greater than or equal to 2.5%, which is 0.025, then you'll say the result is positive. And if the result is less than, we'll say the result is negative. And in every other case, which is between 2.5 and minus 2.5, we will say the result is neutral. Make some more space. We will display the variance values separately in the comments as well. Let's round up the number and multiply it with 100. So we'll just use the worksheet function. So round up and then multiply by 100, and we'll round up with 0 decimals. And finally, let's add a text box to hold the comments. So we'll orient the text horizontally. Let's specify the position and size. I already know the values which I've determined by doing trial and error. So I'm just going to add them in. And let's add some text. We will add our comments over 2 lines. The first line will describe the result based on our select case logic. To move to a new line in the text box, we need to add a line character feed. And the next line will display the total variance. And lastly, let's empty this slide object variable. Okay, let's save our code and test it out. Come to our second sheet. So the title and the table looks good. Our comments have populated. However, I think we need to change this color to white, which will be a bit of a challenge, but let's do that as well. So let's come back to our code. Now the challenge is that we need to change the font for this text box to white. Now, I don't want to complicate this video too much, so we'll use a simple logic. This text box is the third shape that we have added. The first was the title, the second was the table or the report, and the third is this text box. So let's just reference this text box by using the third index for the shape. So similar to accessing the text property, we will now access the font and the color, and specifically RGB. And we'll assign it the RBG value for white, which is this, and that should do it. Let's save the file, run the macro, come to our second slide. That looks better. We need to do one more thing. This font is different from the rest of our font, so we need to change this to Arial bold as well. Let's do that. Since we're going to change 2 properties, let's use a with statement. Okay, we want Arial rounded bold. Let's try this out. Okay, that looks much better. Next, let's add our 4 charts, one for each store. In the previous section, we added a report to our slide along with some commentary. Now, we will add in some charts with some commentary. Conceptually, we're going to perform a similar pattern of steps. That is, add a slide, copy the chart to the slide, resize it, add title, and add the comments. The difference here is that we will loop over these stores, and for each store, we will change the page field value to reflect the correct chart and copy each chart over. Let's go to our code, make some space. We need to declare some variables, which we will address later. Let's come to our store worksheet. We have hard-coded the store names in column A. We will loop over them from the second row to the 5th. Grab the store name. Now, let's set this page field value to equal to the value of the store. I can show you this in code, but it's not too intuitive as it is. Besides, you will encounter many such scenarios depending on which chart you use and which field you want to manipulate. And the easiest way to figure out the code for manipulating charts is to record a macro and then inspect the code. So let's do that. We're in the charts worksheet. Let's go to the developer tab, hit record macro. Any name for the macro is fine. Click OK. Come down to the page field, choose any store, click OK, choose another store and click OK. And that should be enough. Let's stop recording. Let's go back to the VBA editor. The recorded macro will be in a new module. We can see here that the macro has performed two steps. It has first cleared all the filters and then it has set the current page property of the store pivot field to our current store name. So let's copy these two lines of code and paste it below. So our sheet is WS charts. The recorded macro has already captured the name of the pivot table. So we'll leave that as it is. And instead of hard coding the store name, we'll add our store name variable. Okay. Let's add a new slide. Since we are looping over a range, we would not know what the position of the slide number that we are adding in should be. So doing it this way, where we count the current number of slides and adding 1 is the better way. We will add the title only slides. What's happened here? There should not be a dot here. Okay. Next, let's copy the chart over. We can refer to the chart directly using the chart name that we had stored it as. And let's paste the chart into the presentation. Now I'm going to type it out. Just going to use this line again. And let's reposition and resize the chart. I will cheat a bit and use previous code. I already know these values by trial and error. And we had covered all of this in the previous section, so I'm speeding through out here. Let's add a title. Just gonna again copy the code over. We'll make this title a bit dynamic where we mention the store name. In our commentary, we want to know the total variance per store. So these are in rows 5, 9, 13, and 17, which are hard-coded in column B against each store. So let's grab the row number from column B. And we'll use this row to grab the total variance for our current store from the main worksheet. And let's round up the value. Make some space. Let's add some commentary. So this is the same steps as previous. The size and position will be slightly different. I'm just going to make these adjustments. And the text will just say the total variance versus budget is the store variance percentage. And let's set the p slide variable to nothing. And that's it. We will move on to the next iteration of the for loop. Let's save the file and play this macro out. Variable not defined, that's fine. That should be charts. Let's play again. Okay, 4 more slides have been populated at the end. Our title has populated, so as the chart, and a commentary down below as well. So looks good. We are almost at the finish line. All that's left to do is save this presentation file. For the very last section, let's save this PowerPoint file. We will need the full file path. So first, let's grab the folder where we want to save this file. We'll assign a variable for it. And let's go grab the folder. Don't forget the backslash. And then assign a file name. We will include the month and the year as well in the file name. The month will be saved in this variable. And add the year as well. And let's save the file. Now, remember, we are working directly on the slide master template file, and we don't want to make any changes to our original template file. Or in other words, we need to keep it blank. So let's save this current presentation as a copy of our current file. We will use the save copy as method, add the folder path and the file name. We don't need to specify the file format. It'll get saved as the default, which is .pptx. So just to confirm, this method will save a copy of our file without modifying the original. Actually, you know what? Let's put in a safety measure when opening the template file itself. What we can do is add in a read-only parameter when calling this open method. What we'll do is, let's move to a new line and specify read-only as true. You can need a comma in between. Okay. This means that we are opening the file as a read-only copy to begin with. So we don't have to worry about tampering the original template even if the macro breaks down mid-execution. The very last thing left to do is close the file. Okay, let's save the macro and let's run it. I always tend to make silly mistakes at the very end of any project. So let's press OK. This is not file format. It needs to be file name. Let's just stop and play the macro again. Let's go to our folder. Our file has been created. You can see the month and the year as well. Let's just open it. Everything looks correct. You could go one step further and add some code to email this file out as well. But I'll leave that to you to explore and code. And that's a wrap. I hope you learned something new today. That's it from me. I will see you in the next video.